Britain, a place where we have turned poverty and dark history into heritage and convinced ourselves that carbs on carbs is haute cuisine. Today, we go through 12 foods that are absolutely normal here and which we wear as badges of honor, but would leave foreigners utterly baffled. It's 1886 and Fortnum & Mason starts stocking something completely outlandish: American tinned beans. But these were not your ordinary beans. They were Heinz, and they cost the modern equivalent of about £2.15 per tin. It goes without saying that this was a luxury item for the wealthy. Fast forward to 1905, and demand exploded so violently that Heinz opened a factory in Peckham to keep up. Why? Because they had cracked the code. The sweet tomato sauce melting into salty butter, soaking through crispy toast, hit something primal in the British palate. Then, 1941 happened, and the Ministry of Food declared them essential during wartime rationing, cementing their place in our national DNA. Today, Britain demolishes over 2 million tins daily. Around 1860, Joseph Malin was running what might have been just a front room with a fryer on Cleveland Way in Bow, East London. But what he did changed British cuisine forever. He took pescado frito, fried fish from Portuguese and Spanish stews since the 16th century, and married it to thick-cut chips, the working-class fuel sweeping Lancashire and Yorkshire. By 1910, there were over 25,000 fish and chip shops across Britain. That number swelled to 35,000 by the 1930s, before declining to around 10,000 today. And who thought this would get tribal? Enter the vicious North-South divide. The good old Northerners demanded chip spice in Hull, gravy across Lancashire, Henderson's relish in Sheffield. The Southerners? Salt and vinegar. Purely traditional, no nonsense. Bacon, eggs, sausages, beans, mushrooms, tomatoes, black pudding, and toast. That's a 2,000-calorie monument to British excess. But it was not always a British thing for starters. The Victorians weaponized breakfast in the 1860s. Wealthy families flaunted grotesque spreads to scream, "Look how loaded we are." In the modern era, it has turned into a regional civil war. Northerners worship black pudding like it's sacred. The Southerners, however, see that as being absolutely barbaric. Scotland sneaks in haggis and tatty scones. Then there is Wales that counters with laverbread and cockles. Despite the differences, this meal is the designated hangover cure, becoming Britain's favorite on Sundays after a heavy night out. Introducing roasted meat, roast potatoes, Yorkshire pudding, vegetables and gravy. This tradition dates to medieval times when serfs ate meat after church. Yorkshire demanded Yorkshire pudding with everything. Elsewhere, it's beef only. Gravy consistency caused genuine arguments. Should it be thick enough to stand a spoon or thin enough to flow? Then, the leftovers created Monday's bubble and speak. So religious it was that attempting Sunday roast on any other day felt morally wrong, and missing it meant explaining yourself to disappointed relatives. Vegetarian versions then appeared in the 2010s, causing outrage among traditionalists. 1902. German scientist Justus von Liebig transforms brewer's yeast into concentrated paste known as Marmite. It is salty, savory, and overwhelming. During the 2 world wars, soldiers got it for B vitamins. Now, novices tend to slather it on thick, and that's a recipe for disaster. So, what's the secret? A microscopic smear on hot buttered toast. Then came 2011, and Denmark banned it over vitamin regulations, triggering a revolt by British expats. Not to forget Marmite soldiers, those toast strips that bring back pure childhood nostalgia. Dip them in soft-boiled eggs, and suddenly you are 7 again. Scotch eggs were primarily hard-boiled egg wrapped in sausage meat, coated in breadcrumbs, and deep-fried until golden. It traces its origin to 1738, when Fortnum & Mason first made it as a portable snack for wealthy travelers. A proper Scotch egg has a slightly soft yolk, not the rubbery disaster from Tesco. But Gastropubs gentrified it in the 2010s with fancy sausages and red wine juice, completely missing the point. Not to forget that this food also triggered divided opinions, with northern families worshipping it religiously while the southerners seems less concerned about its existence. Imagine a food whose history dates back to the 13th century being in the center of a legal battle in 2011. That's none other than Cornish pasty. In 2011, Cornwall fought for and won protected geographical indication status. Only pasties made in Cornwall following the traditional methods earn the name. Back then, the thick crimped edge was a handle miners could hold with dirty hands and discard later. Traditional Cornish pasties are quite plain. No gravy, no peas, and most definitely no bloody carrots. Today, Greggs sells 2.5 million per week. Well, technically it's not Cornish, but it's close enough for the northerners. If you are already feeling nostalgic, this is the best time to subscribe to the channel. Doing that helps us make more videos just like this. Yes, that's the name for a food. It probably comes from sausages peeking out like toads from holes. This food screamed 18th century ingenuity. Since meat was pricey, why not wrap it in cheap batter and stretch every penny through glorious starch? The trick is getting smoking hot fat before pouring batter. Otherwise, you get a soggy disappointment. And true to its roots, cheap sausages outperform fancy ones. They release more fat while cooking, thus creating perfectly crispy batter. And when you down it in onion gravy generously, the taste is absolutely heaven. And just like other traditional foods, modern gastropubs ruin it with artisan sausages and red wine juice. Black pudding was basically blood sausage made from pork blood, fat, oatmeal, and seasonings. And no one has mastered the art of preparing this food but the folks from Bury, Lancashire, proudly making it since the 1800s. When fried properly, it is crispy outside, soft crumbly inside. And honestly, that rich mineral taste from the blood is delicious, but only if you can handle the concept. The working class loved it since it was cheap but loaded with nutrients such as iron, protein, zinc, and magnesium. However, modern food regulations have ruined it, forcing some manufacturers to turn to dried blood powder instead of fresh blood. Britain also had the chip buddy, which was simply chips between buttered white bread with salt and vinegar. It emerged in industrial northern England during the 19th century when cheap calories were critical. And it's also among the foods that have triggered sharp divisions throughout Britain. There is Lancashire that adds curry sauce, then Liverpool adds gravy, and Sheffield comes in with its Henderson relish preference. And here, the rules are sacred and non-negotiable. It should be proper chip shop chips, the kind that's thick cut and fluffy inside, not that McDonald's joke. The bread should also be white, generously buttered, and slightly squashed. Jellied eels were chopped eels simmered in spiced stock and left to cool into natural jelly around the pieces. They were later served cold with chili vinegar and white pepper. It is the 18th century London East End. The Thames is teeming with eels, making them the cheapest protein for the poor. The jelly was simply gelatin released during cooking, forming natural aspic. By the turn of the 80s and 90s, the decline of the eel population in the Thames due to pollution and overfishing preceded its fall from grace. This was a baked dessert crafted from stale bread, sugar, butter, milk, dried fruit, and eggs. The tradition spans centuries and is the perfect reflection of the principle of working-class families where discarding food was unthinkable. But in the recent past, this food has been gentrified almost beyond recognition. Modern restaurants now use brioche, proper butter, and exotic fruits. The result? Something far more sophisticated and expensive. School dinner ladies made it in massive trays. Now, Michelin-starred restaurants serve it with vanilla ice cream for £8.50. It's edible nostalgia that had to make it onto the list. What food would you love to sample? Let us know in the comment section and see you soon.